concept of net neutrality is a simple one that many people take for granted. Net neutrality is a concept that all things that flow through the internet, whether it be web pages, music, movies, browser searches, etc., must all be treated equally. All content must be able to flow freely through the internet without any outside restrictions. This means that whether you're looking at videos of tiny kittens playing or researching quantum physics at NASA, they are both accessible at the same speed. The idea that all things on the internet are treated equally is important to everyone. The reason it is so important to keep the internet neutral is so that big companies and cable service providers do not take advantage. You are probably wondering how these companies would take advantage if there was no net neutrality. For starters, they would begin by offering two levels of internet. There would be the standard level and a more expensive version that has increased internet speeds. While this may sound good at first, it becomes a problem when there is no restriction to the actual speed of how fast or how slow the two internets actually run. Along with this, companies would be able to pay service providers for increased speeds on their websites. For example, say Netflix pays to have their service run at incredibly high speeds with low load times. Then another new company comes out with a competing service similar to Netflix. This small company can't afford to pay for increased internet speed, therefore has slower service. This huge disadvantage of small companies would greatly decrease the amount of competition. A few years ago, when net neutrality first became a hot topic of discussion, not many people knew what its purpose was. All they heard was that the government was trying to instill restrictions on the internet. Naturally, when people began to hear the government wanted to impose restrictions on something that has always been free, people were initially skeptical and against it. This was the most common misconception about net neutrality. In reality, the FCC did not want to put restrictions on the internet itself. Rather, they're going to put in place restrictions on the companies that provided internet services. This means restrictions on companies such as Comcast, Time Warner Cable, and Verizon, not on services on the internet such as Facebook or Twitter. A few years ago, the FCC decided to look at the internet again and consider it a public utility, and that it should be regulated as such without actually classifying it as utility. After Verizon, a big-name cable provider, heard this news, they decided to sue, and won. This was a large blow to the effort of net neutrality and left its future hanging in the balance. Instead of hanging up its hat on net neutrality, the FCC went back and revised. At this time, net neutrality was getting a lot of recognition by the public and news and entertainment outlets, such as Jimmy Kimmel and Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. After many people began to see the facts of the situation, they took to the internet to let the government see the outpour of support for net neutrality. Not only was there large citizen support, but there was also support for many large companies.
Separate players, but in this debate, it's on the same side as some of them.
Google, Facebook, Netflix, Amazon all signed on to this letter supporting net neutrality.
What's being proposed is so egregious, activists and corporations have been forced onto the same side. That's basically Lex Luthor knocking on Superman's apartment door and going, listen, I know we have our differences, but we have got to get rid of that arsehole in apartment 3B.
In early February, the FCC reconvened to vote on the newly revised net neutrality. In a 3-2 vote, the new legislation passed, giving the government regulating control over the internet service providers. Under this new power, the FCC made 3 major decisions. They were that the internet providers could not block anything that is freely available on the internet, they could not throttle anything or slow down its connection, and they could not provide a faster alternative internet speed. This ruling marked a great success for net neutrality. This passing was a major step for free internet, but is not the end, and the public support is always key to keep moving forward.